Good morning. It is November 20th, Wednesday, and we have some people here and some people online as we start in again on Etger Keret's The 7 Good Years. And I'm enjoying it because I love this writer. And, I think as the world plays in front of us, it gives us a little bit to talk about. Oops. Admitting more people. Wow, we have so many more people on Zoom. Okay. We talked about him and the phone company last time. And we have yours in sincerely and flight meditation. I welcome. Good to see everybody there. Okay. So we're sitting here in the library, and the first sentences. When I was a kid, I always thought that Hebrew Book Week was a legitimate holiday.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And I think that we can't take reading books for granted. That's number one. Our preschool here had the Scholastic Book Club. And I, on purpose, FaceTimed my granddaughter, and I said, what do you want? And she knew every book because her school had Scholastic Book Club. I want Peppa Pig. I want this. And my daughter said, well, we didn't get the How to Tie Your Shoes, get that. And so we got all of that. But I think we can't take for granted that not everybody has the privilege that our children do, our community does. My sister does work with Ready Readers in the city of St. Louis, and they give out thousands of books, and these kids, the only books these kids have. And we know from research and so on and so forth that early reading is so important. It's so important.
We got Bernie's books here.
Yes, Bernie's book. Yes. But what my sister does is, going in, this is, a community that really needs something. And, these kids, and she reads to them and they love the books. And I also have very fond memories of going to the bookstore, of going to the library. And there was a limit. So you had to pick your books. And I also think today that I remember at one point, I don't know how this sounds, but like I had read all the books for my age. And I started reading books because they didn't have, young adults and young readers in the 60s and 70s. And now the kids couldn't get through the books in this library, never mind the books in their library. So I think that what a great advantage that is. What a great advantage is that. And then he starts talking about, writing in the books. And on Sunday, we had the author Adam Nimoy here. I really enjoyed him. And he brought his book, which I'll just tell to everyone in this group, is difficult to read. I suggest getting the audio. I finally had to listen to the audio book of it, but he signed all the books and, he put whatever you wanted in there. And, he's on a book tour. So he did it this morning at another congregation. He's going on and on and on and just doing it and doing it. Anybody have stories of books that they've had signed or written? Alice, and then Roberta, do you have your hand up? Okay, Alice, and then Roberta.
I have a recent story that's really a wonderful story. Doris Kearns Goodwin, I don't know if most of you know, she's a historian that, writes about presidents. Okay, she wrote a book. I guess when I saw the book, I guess it's really for probably older, like maybe 10 and up. I don't know. But anyways, she was speaking through the bookstall. My husband and I do all the stuff through the bookstall. And when we got the invite, it said appropriate for ages 8 and up. Well, our granddaughter is 8 and she's very into like history kind of stuff. Her mother reads her all this stuff. So we said to our daughter, do you think Emerson would like to go? And she said, oh yeah, I think she'd love it. So anyways, we took her and we got to get a book signed. So we went up, we got in a line, we went up. And I have to tell you, Doris Kearns Goodwin was so great with a young person. She engaged my granddaughter in a conversation and she said to her, I think you're the youngest person in this audience. I mean, she made her feel so seen and so important. And then I don't know, I said to her, Doris, that, that Emerson was really interested in history kind of things. And then Emerson put up her hand like that. She had read 3 books that had to do with, I guess, history. So anyways, Doris wrote like the nicest, I'm not gonna say what it was because it's a brag, but anyway, she wrote the nicest thing in the book, a very personal thing. So it was I've had other books signed. This was the best experience and she was a delight.
Listen,
nice.
good for her because she did that with 100, I'm sure she's done it 100 times.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't say what she said to my granddaughter.
Right. Yes. No. But
No, but she engaged people. But that's what I'm saying is that she was, she wasn't tired out of doing this, and she was just really a delight.
okay, yeah. I have Roberta, Sandy, then Lynn. Roberta.
I laughed at this part because I really thought it made sense. Here's somebody who doesn't have any idea who you are, and you're asking him to sign something that's yours. The person that I had was, I forget his name, it escapes me, but he was a famous Nazi hunter and he wrote The Sunflower.
Simon
Wiesenthal.
Oh,
Oh, my.
So I
That's
heard
great. That's,
and I bought
I think that's out.
book, and when it got to be my turn, he goes, what would you like me to write? I didn't know what to say because here's this substantial person of such worth and meaning. I was just dumbfounded. And the same way I asked when we were at a baseball game, I had Bill Buckner sign a ball, me and all the little kids. But you're right, this author just captured it. What do you ask him to write that it has meaning to both of you? It really hit home. I laughed because it was funny. He's talking about someone defacing his property.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it had such truth. I like
Roberta, do you still have the book?
Yes.
Okay. Sandy, Lynn, then Ellen. Sandy, go ahead. You need to unmute. There you go.
I remember every school holiday, my mother took me downtown and we had lunch at Marshall Fields up in the, what is that room?
Walnut room.
Walnut room. And then afterwards, because I had been a good girl, she took me to the book department and we would select a book. And so I had, as a young kid, I had all like Cheryl Ames. I don't know if she was a nurse or an airline stewardess.
I think she was a nurse.
Okay, so then I was going to be a nurse. Then when I finished her series, I would start somebody else. And I loved all these career girl stories. I knew that I was going to go to work and be in one of these professions.
Yeah.
Later in life, much later, just not that many years ago, I met Ann Patchett, and she was such a delight.
Was she nice?
Very nice, very nice. And her life is interesting down in, I think it's in Tennessee. I think she has her own bookshop in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep. All right, well, that,
When I ordered my funeral about a month ago, I paid for my funeral so my kids wouldn't have to deal with that. And on the tombstone, it's going to say, not loving mother, blah, blah, blah. It's going to say she loved books and music.
oh, very nice, very nice. Okay, Lynn, go ahead.
Muted.
Wait. Okay,
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
take, oh, am I unmuted?
No, yes, you're unmuted.
Okay. I'm gonna go to the other story and the line that he said,
Okay, flight meditation.
yes, flight meditation. I don't have a life. I don't have a life. And my feeling is, I was upset by this story because if you've written a book and people have come to see you and hear you, I know he's trying to be funny. I didn't find
What?
the stories funny, I have to
Oh.
say.
Oh, wow.
I'm giving you my point of view.
Okay, what page is that on, Lynn?
Okay. On page 24, and I'm gonna, I liked flight meditation better because I could relate
Okay.
to that.
All
But
right,
when he says, so, okay, in the discrete, intimate confines of this book, I am willing to make a partial admission that I don't have a life, at least not in the traditional everyday sense of the word. And then he talks about, all the flying he's doing. I can imagine his wife and all the visiting and all this, and he sounds worn out. And I found that in this first story, having so much difficulty, and maybe he's making it up that, this whole part, but these pretend dedications I thought were ridiculous. And I just didn't find it funny. And I think
I thought they
I
were,
think this guy is on the verge of being worn out, is what I think. And frankly, I don't think these are short stories. I think these are just ruminations and
okay, I'll take that.
and feature articles that would appear in a newspaper.
Yeah.
That
does.
is
yeah,
my
the news.
opinion.
Alan, and then I'll get to the people in the room.
Okay, well, I'm going back to your question about assigned authors, and then I'll comment on the, well, I'll say in general, I really enjoy this book because whenever you assign it, I know I'm going to go laugh. I do laugh at it. And Lynn, I guess I'll get to this first. I think he's saying it tongue in cheek. I have no life. He's sitting on planes all the time because he goes, he's got, and that we all know how boring, especially with the long distances he goes. He was going to Bangkok or something from Frankfurt or something. It's a long flight. I think so much of what he says is tongue in cheek, but I know I'm always going to smile. And given what's going on in the world, it gives me like a respite. But talking about books, the first chapter I thought was so funny because in all the books that I've bought and have signed, and by the way, thank you for recommending listening to Adam Nimoy. He was great. I was at the program on Sunday. I did not buy the book because I had heard everything he said, but now I think I would listen to it because I know his voice. And I can say, yes, it's his story is somewhat sad, but he's been victorious in the sense that he now has a life. And I don't care that much about Leonard Nimoy. There are people that are more, but I thought was an interesting person. Anyway, in all of the books that have been signed, Roberta, I think it was you that said something about somebody said, what would you like to have written? Which I've had that experience too. And as the buyer of the book, you go, well, I'm not supposed to tell you what you want to write. And so I make something off the cuff, but I just have found that funny as well. So fun to do that, but his almost outrageous stuff of the things that he was going to put in the books was hysterical. I loved it.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
What were you going to say?
Okay, I come from
Real
this.
loud.
Okay, I come from this from the opposite point of view. Last February, we usually go down to Scottsdale for the winter, and they have. I belong to Brandeis, and they have the Brandeis Book and Author luncheon every year. It's a big deal. They bring in 6 authors,
I would love to do that.
and we find out like a couple months in advance who the authors are going to be. So one of the authors that came in February was one of my very favorite authors, Alice McDermott. I've read almost every book she's written. I was so excited about seeing her. I kept thinking, what am I going to say to her? Not what was she going to write to me? So I ended up, I was like so excited to see her. I go up and I start talking to her about how much I love every book she's written, about what my favorite book was. And I'm just inundating her with all of this information. I find she lives in Washington. I had to tell her she lives near my sister. I mean, I had to give her this whole litany of stuff. And when it came time to signing the book, she signed my book that I bought that day. Thank you for your kind words, which I thought was so nice. And then I walked away feeling like I was the character that Kathy Bates played in music. I came away feeling like she must have, I am your biggest fan. I am your biggest fan. And she tied this man up. I didn't feel like, I thought, well, maybe I hope I didn't come across as threatening or anything, but that's how it came across. I said, sometimes you have these moments where you meet someone famous, but you never know what to say and you get a little nervous, but I was so nervous about meeting her because I was so entranced with her writing. So that was my experience.
That's hilarious. Alice.
Yeah. Well, Lynn, this is in response to you.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure I'm going to get a lot of response.
No, this is not these are not short stories.
Right.
It's the 7 Good Years, a memoir. And we're treating them as short stories. I'm going on a trip and I'm actually going to read the whole book because it's bothering me just reading like 4 or 5 pages at a time. So I'm going to read the whole book and then I'm going to reread as we talk about them. But it's a memoir. So this is his life. And it's not, I don't know. I feel you can't, this is his life. He goes to all, can you imagine an author, they're going to these book signings all the time? And people like us are saying, oh, blah, 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 blah. It has to be mind numbing. So this is what he does. He's traveling all over the world. So I found it interesting when he was talking about what it was like, to be in an airplane so often and for such long trips, because when you're going from Israel to other places in the world, almost everything is a long flight. So I just think you have to look at it as it is a memoir, which is it's very different than a short story.
Right. I think I was going into it with a different perspective. So thank you for that, Alice. I will change my whole perspective and think of this as a memoir.
Sue and then Mary. Sue, real loud.
Okay. Well, I'm going back to the first chapter we read about Hebrew Book Week. And when I was a kid, and I remember vividly being in 3rd grade, and we had library period where the whole class would go to the library and we'd get to look at the books and to pick out a book, and the teacher in the library, it wasn't our regular teacher, there was the librarian teacher, and she would give us suggestions and look at what we had chosen. And this went on every single week. We had at least one day where we were sent to the library to choose something to read. And it had a great influence on so many of us.
Absolutely.
And I was always read. My parents always read to me.
Yeah.
And I read to my children. From the time, in fact, I do remember very vividly because my first 2 children were only 14 months apart. And I was nursing one and the other one had just learned to walk, and I had to keep him with me and I'd have a book. And while I was nursing her, I'd be reading to him so he'd sit still.
Yeah.
So books
Yeah.
have always been a really important part of our life, and I just love
Yeah, I love that part.
reading this.
Mary.
Okay. First of all, so first of all, the author made the choice of how you should read this book. It's in years. It's not in little. So you really need to read the whole year and get his perspective for that year. And he carefully chose this. He made the decision not to write this until 2015 because he wanted his father to die first.
Yeah.
And then he was going to go back and he ruminated what to put in it. Now, he had probably written some of this before, but he edited, obviously, changed perspective. We all change our perspective. I mean, we were talking to Sue last night at dinner. We've changed our perspective in our lives from the time we went to a restaurant we went to 20 years ago. So we talked about the difference in perspective of how basically how you looked at dining's, then to now. So that's part of it. And so I think that when you read it, you really have to read the whole year and then think of it as a whole and then break it apart into this. Some snippets are better than others. I mean,
And then we can talk about
but
that.
anyway, but I think that's how he meant it to be read.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy.
I think you may be right about that. And I can't help but think about Adam Nimoy. He also wrote the book about his relationship with his dad after his dad died. And I'm sure that's got to be it's common. Yeah.
I wanted to
Cathartic, but also common. It's got to be common that people do that for many reasons. Evie, Mary,
to finish
Yeah.
one thing. So this isn't about a book signing, but it's about, okay. So my daughter and her friend were at Multiplex. They weren't even 7. It was for my son's 7th birthday. She decided and her friend to get a signature from every Bulls player. So they do it all, but Michael Jordan's contract says he can't sign things without the permission of his agent or whatever. And so he refused. Instead of taking it back, backing off from him, my daughter and her friend went into the men's locker room and said, "We're not leaving till you sign it."
I like your daughter already. I love
And she said other ones had put nice little things, like this guy, So, and they looked and said, and we want something more than Michael Jordan on it.
That's
No, they didn't understand. And I'm standing there going, oh my God,
Listen, I know your daughter. It had to be the other girl.
Rachel.
It's not your daughter doing that.
No, it was Rachel. Rachel was, yes.
Yeah.
And that she was sort of the instigator. Of course, we're going to do this. No, we can't. Yes. But I'm sitting there as a mom, absolutely. And I'm still blushing. I was so embarrassed. And I took them when they came out. I said, you have to be polite. And they go, but they weren't, we had a whole conversation of what was appropriate. But you inundate people who you want to autograph from or a statement from. And I think it's just really hard. I know that sometimes when I write thank you notes and I don't really know the person, I'm not going to write love.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to write fondly.
Right.
I mean, it's like what best wishes sounds a little.
It's sincerely yours.
Yes, sincerely, because it's just a very different. I always have a moment of how do I sign this.
Evie, and then Terry. Oh, wait. I'll unmute you. Hey, I got you.
I have the opposite take. I've never loved the idea of getting in line and waiting for an autograph. First of all, it kind of
I agree.
put a mark on the book, and to me, it was meaningless. It's just something that I never saw the draw of it. I never understood why things were more valuable once they were signed. I know they have these bookstores with that in it. The other thing is, and I just was looking around, and I do have one signed book from somebody that I read about 10 years ago. I read all her books. Joan Anderson, she wrote A Walk on the Beach and The Second Journey. And I said, I'm going to see what she wrote and so on and so forth. And I thought it said be generative, and it was, you will mentor many, which makes no sense. I don't know why she even wrote that. But the other thing is, my background's a little bit different. I was raised by visually impaired, certainly my father, but my mother in a way too. But Saturday afternoons, we walked to the downtown. We lived near North. Walked to the downtown library and back. When it was on Michigan and Randolph.
That was very special to me. Just the idea of going into the building. The building was just, I mean, I felt lost in it because they had these huge ceilings. I didn't know what I was looking for and so forth. And I remember coming home with books. I don't remember necessarily what books they were, but I remember just the joy of just that special time of walking with my dad, who was an elderly man at the time, walking to the library and walking back, and just the idea of being there. And something about libraries in general just still speak to me. And I can't even say why, but it's just kind of a feeling in the gut that I just think that they are so special. And we're so lucky now with what libraries have become, more than just a place with books and having to be quiet and so on and so forth. I mean, sometimes I, feel uncomfortable because I'm maybe not being so quiet and say, oh no, it's okay to talk. And just the involvement is wonderful, but I still have those memories of, I've never been to the new downtown library in all these years, but just that wonderful building on Michigan and Randolph still speaks to me.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Terry, then Merle.
So what has been kind of percolating in my mind as we're talking about inscriptions in books, I have a slightly different take. My parents often gave us books as gifts when we were young, and as after I was married, my sister and brother as well. And we're downsizing. And so I'm going through my bookshelf to see which ones I can part with. And every time I find a book that has an inscription from my parents, I'm like, okay, I have to keep this book, because that's the most special to me, because I kind of hear their voice, I see their handwriting, and it makes me realize how important it is when you give a gift of a book to someone that you write something personal, because then that's the effect it will have on them. It'll be that memory, whether it's a friend or a child or a grandchild. And I think that makes it that much more special. And it, stays with you. In terms of the stories, I thought that they were both, I mean, I love his sense of humor. I really do. And I related to the flight meditation because our children live on opposite coasts, so we're on airplanes a lot. And I find when you're on an airplane, you're in a space where you don't have to deal with your responsibilities.
Mhm.
You can read a book, you can watch a movie, you can just relax, and it kind of takes you out of your everyday. And I know that he was on lots of planes and it got a little bit old, but I still feel that he had that sense when he talks about that was the part he didn't love, the part of staying in line or being aggravated, but the part that he loved was that middle part where he could just be sitting there. And I related to that.
Right. I have Merle, Judy, then Lynn. Merle.
I've had both negative and positive experiences. The negative experience was I met an author at the Art Institute who had written a book on Edward Hopper, and I was going to give this as a gift to a friend named Joyce. I said, could you please write to Joyce and then sign your name? She said, no, I don't know Joyce. You write to Joyce. I'll sign my name. And she said, I have to rush off right now to a radio interview. I'm so sorry. And there were many, many people behind me. She barely had time to write her name. I met Scott Turow at a book signing. He was so nice, and he wrote some very sweet personal thing. And then the other one was they met the poet Yevgeny Yevtushenko, who wrote Bobby Yar at a private
Oh,
park.
yeah. Oh,
I met him. I said, oh, please don't write this to me. Write it to the people of Highland Park. So he wrote to the people of Highland Park, but he spelled Highland Park wrong. Hiland, but I didn't.
well, that makes it authentic.
I didn't have it corrected at all. But I have this book someday, and I thought, my God, someday, I don't think he's died yet. I think he's still alive. I said, someday I will go to
We
the
wait for them to die.
I will go to the library and they can display this case that says to the people of Highland Park. So he was
know how to smell.
very nice.
That's great.
That's funny. Judy, then Lynn.
Okay, I'm assuming that everyone in this class, both in and out of class, we love books. We wouldn't be here if we didn't love books. I love books. When Barbara Bush was in the White House,
she had a literacy program.
Mhm.
And that's my business. I deal with books. So my publisher said, can you come up with a book for literacy? I wrote 2 books for children. They won the American Science Association Award. And I will tell you the greatest gift as an author, I would go to the library, Glenview, Highland Park, Northbrook. I would sit and watch the children, and when they picked my book, tears running down my face. Now, I gave these to my grandchildren. They said, this is very nice, Grandma. And then they never did. But there was a joy in doing this. And I never would have written a book for kids. It was just serendipitous and fun. And I can tell you from the other side of it that it was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Lynn.
Okay, I have to redeem myself.
You're redeemed.
On page 26, I really related to his feelings about being in the air. That when he says, it liberates me from anxieties and guilt feelings, and it strips me of all ambitions, leaving room for a different sort of existence. And I am a compulsive neurotic, for those of you who know me intimately, and I have to be doing something constantly and being productive. And when I fly, all expectations for me are suspended. All judgments about my actions are suspended. I can watch any kind of rom-com in the world that's ridiculous. It is a happy, idiotic existence, as he says, and the kind that doesn't try to make the most of time. And I think we had a discussion right at the beginning. I can't remember about wasting time. It was the other book about nothing is a waste of time if it's doing something for you in a way that makes you happy or relaxed or whatever it is you want out of life. And I find this to be speak so truthfully to all of us in our pressure-filled lives that we have to get on an airplane to feel this way.
I totally agree with you. And one of my fears, because already you can get Wi-Fi on the airplane. And, I don't want to get Wi-Fi. I don't want to be sitting next to someone who's on the phone or click-clacking on their computer. And eventually, I think that that's where we're heading. And I also know that Rabbi Sarada has said that all these things and communication and devices that are meant to make our lives easier, if I have found that if I don't get back to people in a certain amount of time, they get mad. And they don't take into consideration sometimes Shabbat, Chagim. I don't know. I have a life, and so I can certainly appreciate that feeling on a flight, where people can't get at you and pull at you. And sometimes, look, it could be your family. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb at night because sometimes my kids, one lives on the East Coast, they forget. And 5 o'clock, yes, you're awake. I am not awake. You can wait till I wake up. And all these things living in modern times, it's becoming, it's just another stressor at times. Lynn.
I want to comment on something you just said when he said, I don't have a life. When I taught Thoreau, and he said, I did not want to live what was not life. So I said to the students, what's life? What's your definition of life? Is it sitting in a chair? Well, not at this time, for a guy. Is it your parents having a glass of wine and they say, this is life, Very interesting responses. So, for me to impose on someone else that they don't have a life is wrong. But I think what he's trying to say is that's what you need to do, is decide what is living for you And for him, part of it is having this, not this existence that's an idiotic, happy existence. So
Yeah.
for me, that was the important part of this story. This
Yeah.
memoir, excuse me.
Memoir. I think about, I kept thinking about, because we just had an author here, Adam Nimoy, that, was he getting the glazed over look? Was this too much? But listen, this is what they have to do now. They go on these, tiring, exhausting book tours and do the same thing over and over and over. And I can tell people here that I did tape him. He did not want me. Usually I put it up on YouTube, and I'm sure people Google him because he does all these different things, but he said he doesn't want it out there because I'm sure he does the same thing everywhere he goes. So he said to me, I don't want to, I can't remember how he put it, but he doesn't want, somebody else to, be disappointed because they already saw what he's going to say. And listen, he's got all those stories. I don't think people would be disappointed, but so, and I've other authors that we've had, he was through the Jewish Book Council. They've said the same thing. They said, please do not put that up there. And I will tell you, I just put it up and I say what it is. And occasionally people have asked me, oh, I'm reading blah, blah, blah. Can I come to the book group? I'm like, no. Like, oh, you can watch the video, but you live wherever you live. And I also record Jewish Real Classics with Rabbi Sarada, and people look at those, and it's absolutely fascinating. This modern thing. And if you had told me when I first got into the business that I would be conducting classes online, that I have to record them and then talk to people and, say, X, Y, and Z, quick commercial. Sunday, December 8th. That's in 2 weeks. Cantor J and Susan Benjamin are doing the Songs of Paul Simon. We're going to record it, but we cannot, because of copyright issues,
You can't
put that up there. So, if I ever thought that I would be, versed in this, I'm much more versed in this than I thought. The other thing I wanted to say before I forget is that Roberta dropped off. So we have a great library. If you ever need any suggestions about what to read for a country, a topic, Margaret Burka she knows all of our books. She curates them. We have a great new collection of novels and nonfiction. What we don't need or want is anybody's extra books. And who was saying, we're going through our books. And I know that a lot of people here, including myself, were trying to downsize. And I had someone, and I still feel terrible about this, but she came, she goes, look at this beautiful Jewish book. My mom just died. Wouldn't you like it? I said, no. I said, and it's oversized. I said, no, we just don't have, I said, don't you want it? And I don't think she appreciated that comment. And I still, and maybe I shouldn't have said it, but we just, we have a finite space here, and there's so many new books that it's hard to, coordinate that and the push and pull of that. Abby. Wait. There you go.
Okay. Part of me feels guilty because I do most of my reading on a device now. I just don't like taking up the space. I don't like collecting dust as much as I
do.
always enjoy roaming through the shelves. But, if I'm done with it, I'm done with it. The things that I keep on Kindle Unlimited stay here until they say, oh, you have too many. And, I do great courses and those I can hold on to forever and ever and ever. But the point that I was going, on this side, when I do, which isn't very often, the opportunity, but to be able to go on YouTube and actually listen to the author. Yes. I just find that so delightful and helpful in understanding where they're coming from and hearing their voice and seeing them, which maybe it detracts from the interesting and so forth. But, it's a flip side. I treasure books. I too don't know what to do with all these, what I thought were wonderful at one time to give away, but.
I hear you. I also, and Sue Wellick said, I read really, the books I do here, because I want to mark up and, put in my little comments. I buy it, we have it. But otherwise, the pleasure reading. And I remember going on trips and packing books and worrying, what if I run out of books? Like Lynn, I like to be reading. I need, and you can't have a suitcase full of books. Or I'd go away to camp. Do I have enough books? And now I have a million books, and and I actually read on my phone right there.
Oh my
Um,
God.
Yeah.
Read on my phone too.
Yeah.
I can get library books.
Yes, I do library now.
I do library.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to, if you want to know how to do it.
Yeah.
Sandy and then Terry.
Vanessa, I have a
Yes.
set of DVDs that are all about 50 minutes long, each one, and they all are concerned with Jewish history, maybe like the life of Herzl or things like that. Would the library want it? They could be used for classes.
We don't have a DVD player.
Technology has changed it.
And so when people, listen, people want to give us VHS tapes, DVD, we have no players for that. Everything we stream online. Thank you, Sandy, but I don't know if the library would want that, or I can talk to you offline, especially if they're about Israel.
Okay.
Yeah. Terry, then Lynn.
So in terms of donating, my son's a rabbi in Portland, and he has told me how many people come with their Jewish book collections, and they think that they're being so wonderful to donate to the synagogue, and the synagogue cannot take any of it. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It just, and it's sad because you feel like they should be meaningful to someone, but
Yeah.
it's hard. I know when my mom passed away, we gave a lot to the Ark because we were giving furniture as well. So they did take Jewish books at that time. The other thing I was going to say is that I also read things on devices. I get them from the library most of the time. And with this book, it was interesting. I got the audio first because the regular book wasn't available. So I started listening to it. And I didn't really think about who the author was at first. And suddenly I realized, wait a minute, he's Israeli. The narrator is not Israeli. It sounds like American. And I'm like, wait, I can't do this.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It made no sense. So I'm sort of surprised that's the person that was chosen to read this book. So ultimately, I just bought the paperback. I couldn't deal with it.
I think Etger Keret's accent would be too strong for him to read this. And I have read other books that I either get very, we read that The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the main character's name is Hannah, and he keeps pronouncing it Shona through the whole book. And I was like, no. And I have read other books where they had this, and I looked it up because the Hebrew was so spot on. I was like, and I tweeted this guy. I said, thank you. You made it so pleasant, because I get taken out of the experience if the Hebrew's incorrect. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Lynn and then Mary.
I just, I can't give away books because they're all annotated.
Oh, yeah.
And my friends would say, oh, do you have this book? I said, yes, but it's all annotated. How are you going to feel?
How many books do you have, Lynn?
Oh, well.
I'm going to talk to Gary.
Oh my God. I cannot tell you. I mean, I taught English for 34 years.
That's what I was thinking.
Can you imagine what I had to go through? And I cannot read on a Kindle. I can't do any of those devices. I have to have it in my hands.
Yeah.
And this